Welcome to another episode of Resortera Wave, June 16, 2023. A couple of hours removed from the US's 3-0 win over Mexico. In my opinion, is the most convincing win that the US has had over Mexico through all these years. Let it be known that since 2002, when the US beat Mexico in the World Cup, well, US has had more wins than El Tri. No, I feel like that's the case. El Tri has won several Gold Cups. El Tri has won in Estadio Azteca, but not even that. I mean, to be honest, I think the last time El Tri beat the US at Estadio Azteca was like 2009 or something. They've
The
drawn.
Sabagol, right?
Yeah, the Sabagol and I think Israel Castro also scored in that game. So it's something recurrent now. Um, it's not good for Mexican football. I think it's like instead of some sort of moving in the right direction, they're just keep digging themselves more into the ground. So I just think that it was a very accidental game, very embarrassing from the perspective of the tactical approach, but also the emotional approach from many of the players. But it is that type of slap that really actually makes you reflect on the reality, no, that is the crumbling reality that is Mexican football. I think that's the whole spiel. Oscar, good to see you. Not a good night last night, but what can you do? Is you know from personal perspective, you always want to see Mexico win. We said it in the last show, but there was a lot of red flags heading into this one.
No, without a doubt, Nayib. I mean, just to kind of echo off what you said, this has been probably the most dominant performance I've seen, and you were kind of starting to see glimpses of it that this was coming. Even with Tata, I thought the first half in Columbus, in the recent qualifier, we were still competing, but in the second half, the U.S. kind of just took over. And then
I
now
think
you kind of
Cincinnati,
see
¿verdad? It was Cincinnati that one.
Cincinnati,
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati. So yeah, and then this game, I just saw a complete dominance from 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 start to finish. I mean, you could just see like I mean, we'll dive into it, but like the tactical details from like just the cohesion. Like you just look at the difference between how the U.S. played out from the back versus the Mexico did. Just miles difference. The off-ball movement was I don't that was really big for me. Off-ball movement, the way the U.S. players moved off the ball and got open for its players compared to if you saw like a Gallardo who was on the ball, like he would. How many times have you seen this? Like
Where
where should I put it? What do I do? Whereas to the U.S., like everything felt very like orchestrated. Everything was like boom boom ping ping, and I just felt there was way. It just felt more chemistry with them too.
no, and
And even
that
though they're
also,
younger too, they also
even though they're younger, and as we're recording this, Greg Berhalter will return as U.S. men's national team manager.
the only good
Um,
thing for us. That's a benefit for us, if anything.
yeah, in a sense, because there is a lot of people questioning his reapproval as manager. Clint Dempsey being one of the main ones of being, we already did saw him work for 4 years. We made it to the group stage, making it out of the group stage, and look where the U.S. is at the moment. When Dempsey analyzes Berhalter's performance in the World Cup, he says we got out coached by the Netherlands, in a sense of trying to play on the same ground as these elite teams. Mexico's nowhere near that, and they don't have any right at the moment to speak that they can play against a France, a Brazil, in Argentina, and really have an equal chance of winning. I mean, it's just not happening. Yeah, there can be some change of mentality because, as we have seen, El Tri tends to outperform their abilities when they're playing against big teams. But with the talent available now, with the talent at the disposal, it looks very bleak, no? And look, yesterday with the tactical approach, there was one team that really knew how to play. They knew the idea, which was the US. And this is not something that happened from the one day to the other. El Tri with Coca, when you bring Coca as a manager, you have to admit that his style will look like Atlas. And in the first half,
And it did.
looked like Atlas. It looked like Atlas. And you know, the thing is, there was no Furch, there was no Quiñones, there was no
Rocha was in.
there was
Even Oziel didn't even start.
Reyes, there was no the guy that is in Chicago Fire, Jairo Torres. It's a whole different team. But the approach that Coca had with Atlas, he integrated to the national team. And
Very much so.
this,
Very much so.
and I think that's where the Mexican fan can, well, that's where the federation, whoever put Coca, can complain, because you put him there, and you knew what you were gonna get out from this coach. It's not Coca's fault. It's the fault of the people that put him in there. I mean, that's what it
Hmm.
is, no. But this there was one of the things that really hurt last night was just how easily defeated the team got. No, there was no character. There was, they once they knew they were outplayed, they started kicking, sort of like, what teams from low teams do, stuff you do at see at amateur games. That's I think the sad part. It was there was no response tactically. It was all, frustration and disappointment, and just a lack of mental strength overall, which it was
Yes.
something I was kind of over. I wrote a piece on De Lejitos several days ago, and I talked about that. I mean, I just don't see that there's a mental strength in this team.
Hmm. No, I mean the only thing I will add to defend the players, if you will, I do think, and this goes back to even when the way Mexico approached the Argentina game in the World Cup. So I think Mexico as a collective does really well in terms of we're going to be loyal to the coach. Even Juan Carlos Osorio is a perfect example as well. The players are not going to turn the coach, so they're not going to be in the middle of the field and say, all right, guys, the game plan is not working. Let's switch it up ourselves, because obviously the coach is still going to want to go on with his game plan. So I do think in that aspect, the players do need to, I don't know, they could have done something themselves as well. But because they want to follow and not disobey the manager, because it's like a respectful thing too, I feel
Yeah,
like. So it's hard to kind of blame the players as well, because I think they know more, they know football too, Nayib. It's not like they don't see what's going on. They do realize something needed to change, but because that was the game plan, and otherwise you have to get everyone on the same page. It's kind of hard to switch it in the middle of the game, if you will. But the
yeah,
second half, it should have happened. But I mean, like you said, this is Coca's team. That's his teams. That's his style. I mean, we can go back to the old podcast. I don't think it was ever going to suit us. And if he saw that Argentina game, it clearly sees that we don't have those the caliber of players, or even the style of players to fit that style. Like you said, we don't have a Quinones. If we did, the closest thing is Chucky, and he's not available.
yeah. No, and what
So
was
you're relying
alarming,
on Antuna, who was what a very poor game. You
Antuna
have
had a poor game, but at least Antuna put some heart, no? Like he went at
mm,
it, he went at
that's
them, but
true.
he's not a good player. I mean, he's average.
The same thing with you said Henry was Fuchs pretty much, but they're drastically
Well,
different
the height
players.
difference.
Exactly. Just even though Henry is good with his body, I do feel like, but yeah, like I said, I don't think it was a game where you were
Where
just gonna
you
slot
throw a
in.
lot the ball up high and just hope for like a header to one of the guys. Well, it was
Yeah,
kind
I
of like
mean,
try to repeat
I
what
know.
Furch
I
and
think you said
Quinones
it.
did.
You said it perfectly, though. It was literally a depiction of what he did with that glass, and he tried to do it with the pool of players what the national team brings. Granted, I mean, I become a little bit hypocritical because I said if that means Antuna has to start over Chucky or whatever, then that's the case. But not when you have someone like Santi Jimenez who came from Europe, gripping it, and even you just saw right when he came in his first touch, he did this great little one touch play with Orbelin. Even though after that he didn't really do much, but you could just see like the drastic difference between like even though Henry does fit to what he wants in his teams, Santi's quality is just too much to leave on the bench. He should have just started him with.
Yeah,
I would have
yeah.
started Oziel too, but it's
No, and then
complicated
and
going.
like you said, also Jorge Sanchez. I don't.
We
Jorge.
saw we were, that too. We've seen what we already saw with him, and I told you from the beginning. You just start Julian. You already saw what you can get from him, and you saw it. At least
Yeah,
with
and that
At
was
least with,
nothing
we don't
special.
know.
That was nothing special. And then, so there's a lot of bad individual performances. Cesar Montes and Gerardo Artiaga, two players who, in my opinion, have something not right mentally. They're not so mentally strong. The report from Rafa Ramos this morning was that Cesar didn't want to speak to the media in the mix zone prior to the game. So I'm talking about Wednesday when it was, I think Chavez was there, Antuna, Charlie Rodriguez. One of the guys that was supposed to speak to the media was Montes, but Montes didn't want to speak to the media because he didn't want to get asked about his relegation with Espanyol. That's the rumor being spread well with the media that is there in Las Vegas. And then yesterday he just gave up. I mean, he was having a duel with Balangun. Am I saying the name right?
I just say Balagon, but I
Balagun.
don't know.
And it was a feisty one. Both were getting in the kicks. Balagun really went in and
I
even
was gonna
ripped
say
his
to be
sock off.
fair, Balagon probably should have got a red, but
But it's
they,
football. It's football.
that doesn't take away that they dominated us.
Yeah, yeah,
By the
yeah.
way,
But in the moment that Monte saw it, he just went at it and smacked them with, and got a red card, and then it created this whole mayhem that
and it was still early on, right? Nate? Was it like the 60th minute?
16 minutes. Right after that, I think the game just was just it was
For
like
me, it was right when they scored the second one. It was progressively just getting to that point, and then I think that was just a
no, and the
breaking point.
second one came on literally 70 seconds into the second half. I mean, it was just so bad in that sense that you have a halftime talk and then right away you walked out and then you get scored on.
And credit to
Um,
the U.S. Nayib. I don't know if you saw the goal from like beginning to end. It started from the goalkeeper all the way, like typical kind of something that
a
every
good
team wants
counter.
to. I don't think it was a counter. I thought it was more. They played out from the back from the beginning,
Yeah.
like 5 touches, and then yeah, McKinney does that ball behind, which was a brilliant ball by the way. But yeah,
Uh-huh. So look, that happens. This whole I was really really unimpressed with Orbelin. I really
you really defended him. That's your boy.
I defend Orbelin so much because I met him when he was very young at Querétaro. Um, but he just doesn't have it in the national team. I don't know what it is, a mental block or what is it, but he has something. I mean, he was one of the best players
No,
in Greece.
he's a very good player. I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna say that he's a he's a bad player or I mean, is he? Do we overhype him just like we do with anything and with any athlete in
Well,
Mexico?
it's
Of
not too
course,
much overhype. It's admitting that he has something, but it just never works with the national team.
no, I think it is overhyped now
Yeah,
because I mean, you say that he's ripping it in Athens. I mean, and I've been saying this from way back when that in Athens, not even Greece, he's not even a Europa League caliber team, not
that's
even
true.
a
That's
top
true.
10 team. So and I don't want to say like he's bad because that's still something to get out of your comfort zone in Mexico, where he could have made a lot more money and still make good money in Cruz Azul or wherever he
Or
decided to go in
Chivas.
Mexico again, Chivas again. But he decided to take that risk. Celta didn't work out, so he was like, "All right, I'm still gonna fight for my. I still want to try in Europe." He goes to Greece and he's done well there. I mean, there's no denying that he hasn't done well there, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the reality is the caliber and quality what that brings you, that's not going to translate to the national team and against guys who like Weston McKinney, even though Leeds did get relegated, he's obviously a very good player. Christian Pulisic, Balogun, all these guys, they're just quality players compared to the reality of what
No,
Orbelin
look,
is at best.
Serginho Des didn't play this season, and the games he's played against Mexico, he's just chopped them over. I mean,
I
he
think this
chopped
game is his best one, though,
Yeah,
too.
he chopped them last night, and then also in the Arizona friendly, he chopped them too. I mean, it's something that is just recurring. It's because these players play with there is a sense of pride. I mean, they play with pride when they play against Mexico, especially when the crowd is overly.
I think
pro
it's just
Mexico.
confidence too, right? I feel like the pressure of like the fans, they kind of embrace it more versus with the national team players, they seem like the confidence is just not. It's the confidence isn't as there. You could just see the way when they receive the ball, the U.S. players versus the Mexican players, the intent, the intensity. It's like, all right, let's go. Compared to the national team, it's like, all right, where do I go from here? Do I do it this way? I just don't want to mess up, which is the worst way to try to go into a
Yeah,
game.
yeah, because even for example, a player like Edson in the midfield,
Which is
that's
the
the
only
thing that
salvage player that I have now. I thought he was the only one that could probably lift his head up high, even though he
yeah,
was close
but
to losing his head.
yeah, but also with Edson is it was he played a game where he was just trying to like ¿cómo se dice? Apagar los fuegos. Like there was if there was a fire in the defense, he was gonna go over there and cover. If there was a fire in the offense, he would go. So it was like this dude with like carrying buckets of water from one section to the other, and really not playing football. I mean, he was playing football, but it was sort of like covering someone else's ass that it was playing off for. No, it
Yeah,
was,
without a doubt.
and that's something that is sad for Edson because Edson, he's coming from Ajax where everyone has one idea and they protect that idea. And here is you don't even know what the idea is. Is it do we just sit back entirely, or do we actually go forward and attack because we're down 1-0, then 2-0? So there was this whole notion, and it's been going on since the Tata days, of like, what is the idea? What do you really want to put on the field? It's Santi said it after the game to TUDN. It was, we didn't hop into the pitch with the idea of winning. We didn't show a true notion of what we wanted to do to win. And something the US did right away. The US, they had possession. They carried out the moves from the back. Every player seemed to know what their role was on the field. With Mexico, it was all splattered all over the place.
No, without a doubt. I just think too. I don't know. I kind of just goes back to the. I don't know why the. I see a lot of similarities between the Argentina game and Mexico game at the World Cup and this one. And funny enough, I think you were more upset. You're more upset about this loss, and I was more upset about the Argentina loss because I knew what was coming for this game, and you knew what was coming for the Argentina game. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was just funny to see that the correlation there. But yeah,
No,
you're right.
and
It's
and
kind of all over the place.
yeah, yeah, and look, right now, essentially, the rhetoric of all this is remove the manager, start all over. Fire Ares de Parga, fire Julio, fire this guy, fire the dude that cooks the meals. You can really make a massive change with that. I think, and this is like a broken recorder thing. And last night I wrote it to you. I told you, I mean, this is probably one of the nights where I really feel like fed up. No, this is a fed up moment, like, because they repeating the same mistakes over and over again, and it seems that the change will never happen. And when you talk to older Mexicans, experience that, I'm talking about 50, 60-year olds, 70-year olds.
Like our dads, and then
Yeah, our
even
dads, our
like uncles, older
grandpas,
uncles.
and they seen this repeated over and over again, no? But you always want to stay sort of patriotic or have some sense of like, I'm Mexican and I want to support them till the end. But when you see performances like last night, you really get desilusionado, or you lose that sort of like that fire that probably I had more when I was when I was younger. Now
That hope is like
the hope is dying. It's like a candle that slowly went dying.
burns out.
It burns out, and I think that's where I'm at right now, from personal standpoint. It doesn't mean that I will change allegiances or anything. I will still, if Mexico wins something amazing, no, but I think the fanatic is not dumb. The fanatic is not dumb. The young fanatic is more informed than ever. Now they see the numbers on the palm of their hands. They capture the good moments of games in 5 seconds, 10 seconds. They don't watch the whole game. I mean, it's so quick now. And what I'm afraid is, yesterday was the moment where I think the US will start enticing a Mexican American population to support the team. because the team is winning. The team has amazing characters like Weston McKennie. Ricardo Pepi scored. That notion that there's going to be a shift in who you support could potentially, influence the decision that a lot of Mexican Americans will now support the national team, no, the U.S. men's national team.
No, I agree, Nayib. I mean, you could probably speak to this more than me because you grew up in Texas and I grew up in Massachusetts with like what 10 Mexicans here. But for you growing up, someone who was with Mexican descent, why were they choosing to support the U.S. national team back then? It like obviously right now it's very like I mean you said it. You see American players playing in these big clubs, Barcelona, Premier League clubs, Chelsea, and even more now. Like you said, you have someone like Beppe who you can really identify yourself with as a Mexican American, and the list goes on, right? But back then, it was just different. I really can't really speak to that, but you could just see the clear difference. I don't know if you know anyone who actually supported for the U.S. national team
No, no.
growing up.
I mean, there is people that from my age that support the U.S. men's national team as Mexican Americans, and what attracts is depends on where they were born and raised, no, or with whom they were brought up. A lot of guys, that played um, youth soccer, when they were little, they wouldn't watch the three games. They would watch the U.S. men's national because that's what
Oh,
the coach would
interesting.
put on the TV. So like and those were the days of Donovan, and him doing big. The 2002 game when they beat
Was
El
big.
Tri, that was
That was
big
probably
because
one of the big ones.
I think that's the before and after of all this. And now I think it is not a before and after. I mean, I just think it's a prolongation or a continuation of a project that really is giving
Picking
results
up steam. Hmm.
in this region. Right now the US is one of the keys is to stamp not a dominance but really really control the region in a way that they're gonna be like, I already did the region. I beat Mexico and Canada. My focus is to beat England and the Netherlands next. That's kind of their mentality. I don't know if they're going to achieve it in the next World Cup, but they're definitely closer
They're in the right direction.
than El Tri has ever been. El Tri has always been, you cut one project, you cut another, you cut another. There's never a long project. Um, and I might be wrong with this assessment because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, El Tri hasta la muerte, and I understand that, but I think with the youth and how they consume football, this is a big win for the US, seeing this type of because it's not like they won jugando feo. They won jugando bien. I mean, it's nice to die the second goal, for example, like you said.
And you said it before we recorded. I mean, whether it's kind of like kind of bandwagony or not, you're gonna identify with the winner. I mean, we can even go. I don't want to go dive off too much, but just the example of like Manchester City right now. A lot of
Uh-huh.
the youth, they're gonna identify and root and like that team because of the way they play, the amount of trophies they're winning, versus like a Manchester United nowadays or Liverpool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing with the national team. Like if you see the U.S. playing like the way they did today and continue to do that, even at the World Cup, the way they play against England, I thought it was remarkable. They probably should have won, in my opinion. But like you said, the youth and the people, unless they don't have like that big brother or dad or uncle who's gonna introduce them to the sport, which is starting to become. I feel like our generation we don't really do that as much. I don't have kids, but from what I've seen from like older cousins and stuff, they're not really introducing their kids
Hey, hey. Y
to their
eso,
team.
eso poco a
You're
poco
just seeing
cambia.
like the PSG, you know what I mean. In this case, U.S. national team.
Messi's coming to the US, so now there's more interest in MLS. It's like in Mexico. When you look at a kid that is between 5 and 15,
They're gonna go for Tigres probably.
Tigres, because Gignac, what he did, what he represents, and it's a player that actually, ¿cómo se dice? Um, really, really integrated his life to Mexican culture.
Especially
He,
Monterrey in general too,
yeah,
even
in
more.
Monterrey, they love their team. So those are the type of cases that is kind of what's going to happen on this side of the world and in the
Yeah, I
US.
can definitely see that.
There was a video on CBS Golazo I saw this morning. Is a center back Chris Richards, who plays for Crystal Palace, but was also in Bayern Munich. And he's carrying a baby, and the baby is dressed in a Mexico attire. Has it's a Mexico jersey, and he's carrying the baby, taking a picture, and Richards is smiling, and he's not saying no to the baby because he's wearing Mexico colors. They want me to take a picture with the baby. And I think it's a very, very symbolic picture and a very, very symbolic moment because Chris Richards represents the youth of U.S. soccer. A kid from the FC Dallas goes to Bayern Munich and now in Crystal Palace playing Premier League minutes. I think he played a lot of minutes in the Premier League this season with starting with Vieira and then. But that's the soccer that is happening in the U.S. and that is not the case in Mexico. Not the case at all. That you see that sort of rapid development and you're seeing the solutions or the stuff on the field. I mean, Richards looked impeccable last night. Nada que ver con lo que vimos de Montes and how he just lost it. Was like, fuck it. Me expulsa, I don't care. We're getting destroyed. Richard is the total opposite, Even after the win, and after all this stuff, because those fans throwing stuff to the pitch and the chant, he still takes time to interact with the rivals fans after the win. And that says a lot about him. And it says a lot about the team chemistry and also the familial aspect that this team has. And I think that's where ya nos rebasaron, pero a lot, because you don't.
You've met many times before. I'm like club over country at this point because
Yeah.
the hope of Cruz Azul maybe winning a Copa Libertadores, if we can get our stuff together, if we can give them the money, whatever they need, that's still an inspiring thing that I can see us doing versus the national team going to a World Cup and actually competing and doing well against a France, a Spain, a Germany, consistently going to the round of eights, going to maybe a semifinal, going to a World Cup final. It's just not going to happen in our lifetime, my kid's lifetime, even my grandkids' lifetime, unfortunately, in my opinion. It
Yeah.
could, but I hope it does, but I don't think it's going to happen. So, I mean, like you said, that light that's in there for every national team fan that they try to see that hope with the national team. I just think you just tap out a little, but it's just something about to like being a fan of sports in general. I mean, just in going back to what you said, when you have that light, but for some reason you always like you just can't help but caring. Like I say, I'm club over country, but like I told you, I'm excited about tonight's game, and you
Yeah.
just can't help it, and you can't help but be upset about the result and everything. I mean, you start digging up the wormholes and being like, this is the problem, this is the problem. We got to do this, we got to do that, and I just think that's just part of sports in general. Like you can't help it too. So like once you just get a little win, like the Olympic gold medal, I think that's the last win where I'm still holding on to
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
hope. You just always gonna end up caring. I know your message last night. You felt I never heard you feel so like defeated like that or like unoptimistic. But I think you are still you're gonna do something and you're still gonna care and try to see how you can put the limelight into how can we resolve and move forward. But I think that's just the beauty of sports and that's the how sports is. So
Yeah.
hopefully we
Yeah.
can find a
No,
way.
no, and then hopefully things really, they can sort of sit down and really, admit that things are not going in the right direction, that things are really worsening. It's not, there's no improvement whatsoever. The improvement won't be done by a manager. I mean, that's for sure. Um, you really have to buy into an idea and buy into people that could lead a massive change. This whole thing about quick results, is never helpful. Because for example, they win the Gold Cup. It's like, oh, we win the World Cup. It's over. We're back on track. We're advancing. And the reality is no, no. You really can make determining decisions or determining conclusions from a short period of time. You really need to analyze, this is a 4-year thing, 8-year thing, but that's stuff that we've said many times before. And it looks like for the federativos, directivos, it's something that goes through 1 year and then goes out through the other one. They don't care. The team supposedly the FMF. This is a report from that I read this morning on Substack, from this Substack called El Mister. Does excellent, analysis of business and whatnot. He says that El Tri makes around $105 million, between 105 and 115 million dollars per year. Whether this thing goes well or goes bad, like last night, they're still gonna make between 105 and 115 million dollars. Why can't you actually organize something that is worthwhile with that amount of money? Like, I just don't get it. There's so much potential, but really there is no direction or no sense of how to lead El Tri to have some sort of organization, to have some sort of identity that really allows you to compete against the best in the world. But um, we'll see. I think uh, it is one of the it's the worst defeat against the U.S. I think that's for sure. For sure, um, it's up there. As one of the defeats in the history of Mexican football.
Where
With the
we get
seven.
outplayed more than anything, right?
Yeah, we got outplayed. It was just nasty. It was really, really looked. It didn't look like a team. It didn't. I think it's a slap to the face to like people that actually played well for El Tri. Like people like, I don't know. I want to think about Ramoncito Morales, for example. Giovanni Dos Santos, even Giovanni with his sort of theatrics that he's had in his career. But at least he really played good games, especially against the U.S. People like Pavel Pardo, Garcia Aspe, those players that really had some added, Cuauhtemoc, you know.
I was gonna
Um,
say, do you think Guardado had a good national team career? Like from an individual perspective, I don't think he's been like pretty average, right? Like 7 performances at best, even when he's at his
yeah.
best. And that just
He
goes to
was
show.
he said he's had high peaks in the Gold Cups, but like, and then I think his best World Cup was the 2014 World Cup. But 2018 and 2022 were just like
He's coming off injuries.
coming off injuries, and his club level was excellent with Betis, but he didn't showcase that level with Betis with the national team. There was a lot of questions of his health, no, of his physical, how much can he last on the field. Um, but it's a crazy career still, with Guardado, because he started his career with the national team against Argentina, steps off injured, and that's in 2006, and then in 2022 he starts against Argentina, is
Against the
playing
same
really
team.
good,
Wow, yeah, you're right.
and then he walks off injured as well. So it's like you always end with that eternal what if Guardado actually plays the whole game in 2006 and then plays the whole game in 2022, because I did see a relief from Scaloni when he saw that Guardado was out,
I
because
mean,
Guardado
he dictated the tempo for that national team. I mean, as soon as he came off, you saw like the confidence of everyone else just drop and the intensity drop because he was going into tackles like this every single one because he know this is the last, this is
is the last
his
one.
last dance, if you will. And I think also too, kind of we can say back to with like the, you said Edson has Ajax players, and you said there's one more than anything an idea, and then like the quality of players. Do you think Guardado also suffered that too? Because like you said, at club level, to anyone question his quality, just look at him with Betis. He was starting games against Real Madrid and against a midfield with Cruz, Modric, you know, a league caliber players, and with the national team, he's around. I mean, with all due respect, who was he was around? Luis Chavez,
Vega,
he was okay.
Antuna,
But who's in the midfield with him? I'm trying to think now. For like a
in
long,
that game.
Hector Herrera was around him. Um, or Berlin, which I've said he's not a national team player, but I think he
Charlie
just suffered that too.
Rodriguez.
Charlie, I
Este,
think he suffered
but
that
yeah,
too.
it's a very, very tricky situation, because it's sort of confrontational. No, it's always that division of the player that comes from Europe and the player that
That's
is from
true.
Liga
That's
MX.
true.
And I think that has also self-imploded in situations like last night's in Las Vegas. Is
You think so?
there is a lack of accountability from both sides, from both groups, no? Because there was a lot of critique that Coca gave them time. I mean, to show up to this. They didn't participate in the Cameroon friendly. Most of the play, well, a good chunk of the players that played last night, you know, they had a privilege, extra days off, and it backfired. It backfired because they clearly looked like there was a clear separation between those that had been in the camp beforehand and those that just barely arrived. No, there was not a clear, um, unition between those two groups. And I think in a team when you have those disparities, stuff like last night happens. No, that one team that is clearly in a union easily breaks apart the team that is not so clear with what it wants or what it wants to do on the field.
Hmm. Um, Also, maybe just to put some blame on us too, Naive, as the fans and quote unquote media, I guess. I don't know if we're media. You're more media than me, I think.
No.
But you touch up on like short term versus long term, and whether like say if we win the World Cup or we don't win it or not. The thing is, in our fan base or our culture, I don't think it's just our culture. I think all sports do this. If we don't win the World Cup, it's like, how do you not win that? You're Mexico, you're in the dominant region. And then when you do win it, it's like, oh, Copa Fácil, of course you have to win it. There's never like, all right, what has happened here and how can we progress? So when there's only two things, like it's either shit or we're good. I think
Yeah.
that's an issue too on our end. I think too as well. It doesn't help the coach, the people who run the federation as well. They don't get a fair assessment as well. I know I hate defending them, but I think that's the reality too. I mean, especially on their end, like I said, they're business savvy people. When when I told you, even though there's a large population of the Mexican population who are pretty much like kind of fed up with the national team, they're not gonna go to friendlies. They're not gonna buy the latest merchandise. But how packed was that stadium last night?
Very packed.
Mexico has become one of those teams where like I mean I'm not saying we're like a Manchester United or Real Madrid, but on
Pues
the
es como
national
los
team
es,
level,
es como los Cowboys. I mean,
yeah,
when was the last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl? And that stadium
exactly.
is always packed.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter how we can't as a fan, we'll never be able to do an impact where like the business people are like maybe we do have to change something because obviously not working. Fans are not coming in anymore. They're not buying. It's the opposite. More people are buying stuff. More people are filling up the stadiums. And if say me and you are stop, my kid
When I
one
was
day or
covering
someone's
when
gonna
I
go
was
up.
covering El Tri, not on a daily basis, but when I actually had a chance to go to the games more often as a press, um, one of my first conclusions was going to see El Tri is like going to Disney. You don't go because of the game or because you support the team. You go for the experience. To
Yeah.
echar relajo, listen to the banda music, eat carne asada in the tailgate, do something with the family. I mean, when you think about the families, is the fabric of family in a Mexican household. I mean, el papá siempre trabajando, la mamá cuidando a los niños, or vice versa, both parents working. There's very few times where there's like a moment of union of something you do together.
Like I
And
mean, you said it perfectly. It's
yeah,
Mexican Disney World for us to
yeah,
go see
that's
the
what it
national
is.
team.
That's what it is. And it is, especially when you think about a lot of our paisanos that haven't been to Mexico for many years. You need that escape from this constant work and routine that is not, it's just a boring routine when you think about it. But no tienes otra, you gotta survive. And the few moments of pleasure that you have is when you go see the national team, or you go see your favorite artist, or you go see something. But for the Mexican to go see El Tri is like going to Disney. It's something like that. And that's one of the first conclusions I had when I started covering the national team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. without a doubt. I mean, you could probably relate more too because you grew up in Texas. Um, but even here, now, Gillette Stadium sold out when the national like, and it's like anywhere, anywhere.
Yeah,
It's
no,
nuts.
and I remember when in 2010 when El Tri played Ecuador at MetLife Stadium before the South Africa World Cup. It was the first ever sporting event at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It wasn't a American football game. It was a soccer game between Ecuador and Mexico. There was people from New Jersey, Philadelphia, New
Connecticut,
England
all over. Yeah,
that were coming just for the game, for the experience to be around the Mexican national team. You know, it's pretty crazy the stuff people do to be in those games. And I think that's where it pisses me off is that the players really don't care about that. They're like, you know, they just don't see that part. They don't see those sacrifices because for them it doesn't affect them. I mean, they will keep going on with their careers,
I
winning
think
millions of
I
dollars.
think they do, Naive. I just think also I think they do to be fair,
Okay,
but but the thing is when you're a fan too, you care about it different than like when you're actually playing on a field. I mean, how many times have you heard like in the Liga MX or the national team, if you don't think we're hurting now more, if not more than you because we played it, I think it's different when you're playing because say like what happened yesterday, they kind of lost their heads. They were kind of like zoned out. They probably don't even remember what happened after they went up 2-0, but they just get lost. But I bet you they're just as frustrated. But obviously, they're not keeping into account, oh, how much did that fan pay? How much? I think they're aware of it, but I do think they have like other priorities too. They got to work. I mean, how much shit do they get given on a given day too? Like, I think that's the issue too with in Mexico soccer is the one and only sport for the most part. Maybe
yeah,
boxing, baseball you can throw in there. The U.S. has the luxury of having American football, baseball, hockey, and basketball, where the attention is more on that versus soccer. So you're only starting to see now where the U.S. men's national team is starting to get like that pressure or
from the
certain
press.
expectations at the press exactly versus Mexico. I mean, I hate to say it, Ochoa said it best. I think it was 2010 where like in Mexico they ask more about the footballer than like the people who govern
Yeah, yeah,
the governing body in Mexico,
or like
which
the
is
thing.
different than to here to U.S. soccer.
John Sutcliffe on Twitter last night said that the national team is reflection of the country. And the country, Mexico as we know it, it's all over the place. You know, it's different things go corruption, you know, violence, you know, the lack of organization. I think that's the key terms there. In Mexico, there's a lot of lack of organization in many areas, from the legal, you name it,
Any and
many
everything
areas.
between.
Business, how business is done. You know, yesterday in the suite where the directors were, the new president, Juan Carlos Rodriguez and Davino, Ares de Parga, in that suite, it was the agent of Coca was sitting there, Bragarni. What does that say? Is that like, what is that? Why is the agent sitting with the president of the national team? I mean, can the agent be sitting somewhere else? Why does he have so much influence that has the right to be there? You know, around that group of people that supposedly are leading the national team. So I mean, it's everything is murky, and you know we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. Um, in terms of recording another episode of the national team, I don't think we will. Um, you know, I think
Oh
this
wow,
is
they really broke you.
yeah. I don't think I'm gonna waste time, you know, or spend time, significant time, you know, because I think everything that had to be said was said already. Now it's in terms of like, you know, how do you know, pitch in or do some help or I don't know, maybe in the future, whatever. There's other things in life, I think, or that are more bigger than, you know, it's like what how Valdano says. I mean, soccer is it's the most important of the least important things in life. And the national team, you know, it proved it last night. There's other bigger things and more special things. You know, it is what it is. Hopefully there is some sort of resurrection at one point. But it's looking very, very bleak. I think, you know, I like I said, I think we said what we had to say. I don't think you can say no more. I mean, we said it even before after the defeat against Argentina. A lot of the same teams are today, and there's no change basically.
I mean, even goes back even further for me, Nayib, because the way I was introduced to you was the Mexican soccer show. So shout out to the guys over there. And I remember you guys talking about the exact same thing what we're talking about now. And just to kind of be full circle and just kind of put the nail in the coffin. I mean, I'm always gonna be there and support. I'm probably gonna
Yeah,
buy
me
the
too,
merchandise
probably.
again. And if they come to Boston, Naive, I'm probably gonna go. I'm a hypocrite, but I don't know. It's gonna take a real big shakeup to see, like, to be like, oh, this is something's really gonna happen. Even I thought at least Coca would put, even if Coca put Edson at the center back and put someone else in that holding mid, I would have been okay. This is someone who's realizing Edson is not a defensive midfielder. Let's put someone else. Might as well risk it. Put Chiquito Sanchez. Might as well.
Yeah, which is something that we dropped
Um,
here. We
yeah,
mentioned his presence.
but it's one of those things where, like, I just feel like certain players and certain things that it's just always going to be there unless we are in charge. Like, if I was in charge, I'd do completely different
No, y
about
eso
it.
es un sueño guajiro. That's also like, it's sort of like, maybe one day, but
I
it's
mean, we can even talk about that now. But at this point, I think in hindsight now, I wanted Almada, but I think in hindsight, especially seeing this that performance, we had a foreigner, an Argentine, who I know watched that Argentina Mexico game. We're never gonna, if we're gonna lose, at least lose playing beautiful like we do.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think that's the importance of, I guess, I think we just need to have a national team, a Mexican being the coach at the national team level. And if that means having Piojo, then
I don't know about that too. Though that you're going
reluctantly,
areas. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean,
Ambris, I'd settle for
yeah, let's
Ambris,
go with
but if that
Ambris.
means Piojo over Coca, just to have,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
just
Or
to start to just to create our identity.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
go with Ambris. I mean, bring in people that that are former players, know that actually know what it
Get those
takes.
los maestros from I was telling you earlier in the
Yeah, do
pod. Get those
something.
guys in charge. But
Tuca can be an assistant, something like that. I don't know. You
counts
know.
some forward counts that he knows. Like, he knows the Mexican game more than anyone. But
Yeah.
like I said, Nate, we're never gonna knock on wood. Well, who knows? Maybe, but I doubt it. Some will get we be
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
position one day to shake things up.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We gotta work. We got a lot of work to do. That's one thing. If we aspire for that thing, it's a lot of work.
Or anyone
Um,
who shares the same similar, anyone who's out there, if you guys are listening, you guys can do it. I hope you do it. If it's not us,
yeah. No, and then we'll be the number one supporters. To be honest, So I think that wraps the show. We'll see when we record another one, Oscar. It's always great chatting with you about the game and just knowing a little bit more about what's going on over there in Europe with the styles and stuff. But yeah, for now, I think we're gonna pause it a little bit. The Resortera way. Um, it was a hard one. It's tough. It's tough because we
long
don't.
season.
Yeah, we don't. It's because ¿qué más tienes que decir? What else do you have to say? I mean, we said it already. It's there. It's. I think that we basically try to we offered solutions and everything, and it's not there. And then to the people that watch us, appreciate it a lot, and then we'll see what other things might happen in the near future. But if it's something worth talking about for several minutes, then we'll probably record something. But for now, we'll take a little pause again.
Yeah, maybe once the season kicks off again, maybe Nai will be into it. But right now, especially, God forbid, we lose the Gold Cup.
Yeah, which is really possible to be honest. And at this stage, they can lose to Panama if they want to, the third place game. I mean, it's that's how it is. So, thanks Oscar for the time, and then we'll be sure to be back. Maybe in a couple of months. We'll see how the
Enjoy your
situation is.
summers, guys. Enjoy.
Enjoy the summer. Do
Yeah,
something
but we'll
cool.
be hopefully we'll be back for the next Premier League season, all that Liga MX season. But enjoy your time is off.
All right.